On a stormy night in a forgotten town, a man rents a cheap house, only to discover a massive mirror that watches him back. As his reflection begins to move on its own and a dark presence emerges from within the glass, he realizes something terrifying. The mirror isn't reflecting reality, it's replacing it. If you love psychological horror, cursed objects, and haunting supernatural mysteries, this chilling story will make you question every reflection you see. I once did not believe in ghosts. I once thought all the stories about figures in mirrors, voices calling at midnight, or cursed rooms were only products of an imagination too exhausted. When people are lonely, sleep-deprived, or frightened, they often create images to scare themselves. I believed that for many years. Until that rainy season, when I moved into the old house at the end of an alley on the edge of town and slept in the room with the large mirror. That house was rented out at a price so cheap it was suspicious. It stood behind an abandoned garden, at the end of a muddy dirt road that almost no one passed through at night. The iron fence in front of the house had rusted, and the gate always made a creaking sound even when there was no wind. The tiled roof was covered in black moss, the walls blotched with damp stains running down like the marks of someone's fingers scratching from years ago. The agent told me the owner needed to rent it out quickly because he did not want to leave the house empty. I asked why such a large house was cheaper than even a small room in town. And he only gave an awkward smile, saying the house was old, so few people liked it. The day I came to receive the key, the rain was pouring heavily. The landlord was a man in his 50s, thin, gray-skinned, with deeply sunken eyes. He did not step into the house with me but only stood on the porch, pressing the cold bunch of keys into my hand. Before leaving, he gave one very quiet warning, almost swallowed by the sound of the rain. You may stay in any room, but it is best not to sleep in the room at the end of the hallway on the second floor. I asked why. He looked up at the dark window on the second floor. In that instant, I saw his face change color, as if someone behind that window was looking down at us. That room has a mirror, he said. It should not face the bed. I laughed because I thought he was superstitious, but he did not laugh. He only looked at me for a long time and added, "By the time you understand, it is usually too late." After saying that, he hurried away in the rain, leaving me alone before the cold, silent house. I pulled my suitcase inside. The main door opened to a strong musty smell, mixed with the odor of rotten wood and something faintly fishy, like rainwater that had sat too long in a dry well. The floor creaked under every step. The living room was wide but dark, even in daylight. The light could not reach deep inside. Old dark brown curtains, covered in dust, hung motionless like funeral shrouds. A few picture frames still remained on the walls, already yellowed with age, but the faces in the pictures had all been scratched away, as if someone had once used fingernails to claw out their eyes and mouths. I walked through the house once. The first floor had a living room, kitchen, one small bedroom, and a bathroom. The second floor had 3 rooms. The first 2 were messy, filled with cardboard boxes and old belongings. The room at the end of the hallway was completely different. Its door was shut tight. The lock was not rusted like the others but polished clean, as if it was still used often. When I inserted the key, A cold breath blew out from the crack before I even opened the door. That room was wider than I had imagined. The floor was old wood, the ceiling high, the large window overlooking the garden behind the house. In the middle of the room was a heavy wooden bed covered with a faded white sheet. And opposite the bed, against the other wall, stood a large mirror. It was almost as tall as the ceiling and as wide as a pair of double doors. The frame was made of black wood, carved with tangled patterns, vines, human faces, hands reaching up from something that looked like water. The surface of the mirror was not clear like a new mirror but slightly cloudy, glowing with a yellow-gray tint, like the color of dead skin under an oil lamp. I stepped closer and looked at myself in it. My reflection appeared normal, only a little darker than the real room. But the longer I looked, the more I felt that behind my image in the mirror was deeper than it should have been. As if the mirror was not reflecting the room, but opening into another room behind the glass. I remembered the landlord's warning. It is best not to sleep in the room at the end of the hallway. But I had worked all day, had just moved house in the rain, and my body was exhausted. This room was the cleanest, the widest, and the bed, though old, could still be used. I told myself there was nothing frightening about a mirror. Superstitious words only worked on people who wanted to believe them. That first night, I slept in that room. At nearly 2 in the morning, I woke up. Not because of a sound, not because of a nightmare. I woke because I felt someone standing very close to the bed, bending down to watch me sleep. That feeling was so clear that my face went numb and my spine turned cold. I lay still for a few seconds, listening to the rain falling outside the window and the sound of the wood in the house shrinking from the dampness. The room was pitch black, with only a faint strip of light from the garden coming through the curtains. I opened my eyes. The mirror opposite the bed reflected a blurry patch of darkness. In it, I saw myself lying on my side on the bed. But something was wrong. I had my eyes open. Yet the person in the mirror still had his eyes closed. I held my breath. A few seconds later, the eyelids of the reflection slowly opened. Slower than me. Only one beat, but enough to make my heart pound. I sat up abruptly. The figure in the mirror also sat up, but still slower, like a lazy shadow being dragged behind the real body. I raised my hand and rubbed my eyes, telling myself it must be because I was sleepy, because the light was too dim. When I looked again, everything was normal. The image in the mirror did exactly what I did. I turned on the bedside lamp. The weak yellow light spread across the room. The mirror stood silent, old, harmless. I could not fall asleep again right away. Only near dawn did I finally drift off. The next day, I tried to forget it. I cleaned the house, arranged my things, opened the windows to reduce the dampness. But no matter what I did, I always felt that the room at the end of the hallway was colder than every other place. Especially the mirror. Even though the weather outside was hot and humid, its glass remained icy cold when touched. As cold as placing a hand on a stone at the bottom of a well. That afternoon, an old woman selling drinks at the head of the alley saw me passing and called me over. She asked if I was the new tenant of the house at the end of the road. When I nodded, her face immediately darkened. "Which room are you sleeping in?" I said the room at the end of the second-floor hallway. The old woman remained silent for a very long time. "There is a large mirror in that room, isn't there?" I felt slightly irritated. Why does everyone keep mentioning that mirror? She looked around, as if afraid someone might hear, then lowered her voice. "That mirror was not originally part of the house. It was brought back after a funeral." I asked whose funeral. The old woman told me that many years ago, the house belonged to a wealthy family in the area. The wife died young, in that very room at the end of the hallway. Before she died, she always said someone in the mirror was calling her. At first, no one believed her. Later, she began sleeping during the day and staying awake at night, sitting before the mirror for hours, talking to her reflection. Some nights, the servants heard two identical voices in the room, one voice outside, one echoing from inside the mirror. Then one morning, they found her dead on the bed, her eyes wide open, staring at the mirror, her mouth smiling, and the mirror was covered with handprints from the inside of the glass. I laughed, but my laugh was dry. The old woman was not angry. She only said, "After that, everyone who slept in that room changed. Some disappeared, some went mad, some remained alive, but their families said they were no longer themselves." I did not want to hear more. I thanked her briefly and returned home. That night, I pulled a large cloth over the mirror before sleeping. I even used rope to tie all four corners tightly to the wooden frame. After doing that, the room seemed easier to bear. At least I no longer had to see my own reflection lying opposite me in the darkness. But in the middle of the night, I woke again. This time, I heard breathing. Very faint. Not my breathing. That breath came from the direction opposite the bed. Slow, heavy, wet, like someone breathing through a layer of water. I lay still, my entire body stiff. In the darkness, I looked toward the mirror. The cloth was still covering it, but it was swelling outward, as if someone were standing behind the cloth, pressing their face against it, breathing out waves of cold air. I turned on the light. The cloth collapsed immediately. The room was empty. I walked over to check. The rope was still tied tight, but in the exact center of the cloth, where it should have been pressed only against a flat mirror surface, there was a round damp stain. I touched it. It was cold and slimy. I brought my fingers to my nose and immediately felt nauseous. A fishy smell. A smell like stagnant pond water mixed with rotting hair. The next morning, the cloth had fallen onto the floor. The ropes were still intact. Not broken, not loosened, but the cloth lay at the foot of the bed, neatly folded into a rectangle. On the cloth were thin black streaks like hair. I picked it up and saw that it really was hair. Long, wet, jet black strands clung to the cloth as if they had just been pulled from a drain. I began to lose sleep. In the days that followed, I always had the feeling that someone was in the house. When I cooked in the kitchen, footsteps sounded upstairs, pacing back and forth. When I went up to check, the hallway was empty. When I showered, the small mirror in the bathroom fogged over, and on it appeared a crooked line of words. "Do not look too long." I wiped it away immediately, but the words appeared again, darker. "It is learning your face." I threw the small mirror into the trash. That night, while brushing my teeth using the faint reflection in the window glass, I saw someone standing behind me at the top of the stairs. I spun around. No one was there, but in the instant before it vanished, I clearly saw that it was me. Another me. Standing in the darkness. Head slightly tilted. Mouth smiling. I decided to move downstairs and sleep in the living room. I dragged my mattress down to the first floor and locked the door to the room at the end of the hallway. But in the middle of the night, I was awakened by knocking from upstairs. Knock. 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 The slow knocks echoed down the staircase, steady as fingernails tapping on wood. I lay still in the living room, cold sweat breaking out across my body. I knew the sound came from the room with the mirror. The door of that room was being knocked from the inside. Knock. 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 Then a voice rang out. My voice. Let me out. I did not answer. The voice spoke again, this time clearer, closer. Let me out. You are tired already? Let me live in your place? I covered my ears, but the voice still slipped into my head. Soft, persistent, like someone whispering from inside my skull. It began calling my name, calling my full name correctly, calling in my mother's voice, then in the voice of my former lover, then in my own voice as a child. Those voices took turns begging, coaxing, threatening. Come up here. Look at me. Sleep. Just sleep for a little while. I stayed awake until morning. As soon as daylight appeared, I ran upstairs. The door to the room at the end of the hallway was still locked. But the surface of the door was covered in wet handprints. The handprints had been made from the inside, dragging all the way down to the floor, as if someone had pressed their hands against the door and clawed downward in despair. I opened the door. The mirror was no longer dusty. The glass was brighter than before. In the mirror, the room was reflected very clearly. Except the bed in the mirror was not empty. Someone was lying on it. Someone who looked like me. It lay on its side, facing away, its body covered beneath a white blanket. I stood frozen at the doorway. In the real room, the bed was empty, but in the mirror, I was sleeping on the bed. Then, slowly, it moved. Its shoulders trembled as if it were laughing. It slowly turned its head. Its face looked like mine, but not completely. The skin was paler. The eyes were darker. The mouth was wider. It looked at me through the glass, then raised a finger to its lips. Shush. Then it pulled the blanket over its head. I slammed the door shut and ran downstairs. I called the landlord, but the number could not be reached. I went to the address written in the rental contract, but it was an old shop that had been closed for many years. People nearby said they had never heard of the man's name. When I described his appearance, a woman at a grocery shop turned pale and said he resembled the former owner of the house. But that man had died more than 10 years earlier. How did he die? I asked. She did not want to say. Only after I begged for a long time did she tell me. He had hanged himself in the room at the end of the hallway on the second floor. When people broke the door open, his body was hanging in front of the mirror. But the strange thing was that the mirror did not reflect his corpse. In the mirror, people saw him standing on the floor, calmly watching his own body swinging and smiling. I left that place in a state of panic. That night, I intended to pack my things and leave, but when I returned home, I found that all my suitcases had been dragged up to the second floor. My clothes were neatly arranged on the bed in the room with the mirror. My phone, documents, and wallet were also placed before the mirror, orderly like offerings. I rushed in to take my things. As soon as I touched the phone, the screen lit up by itself. The front camera opened. On the screen, I saw my face, and behind me, the large mirror reflected the room. In the mirror, a woman was standing beside the bed. Long hair covered her face. Her wet white dress clung to her emaciated body. I did not see her in the real room. I saw her only on the phone screen. Through the reflection from the mirror, she stood motionless, head bowed. Water dripped from her hair onto the floor inside the mirror. Drip, drip, drip. Then she raised her head. Behind the layer of hair, I saw a bruised purple face, bulging white eyes, and a mouth slit wide to both ears. She was not looking at me through the phone. She was looking directly at my reflection in the mirror. One skeletal hand rose and rested on the shoulder of me in the mirror. Immediately, my real shoulder turned icy cold. I spun around. No one was there, but the smell of wet hair and stagnant pond water filled the entire room. I grabbed my things and ran. As I went down the stairs, I heard the sound of bare feet following behind me. Not fast, not slow, each step wet and soft on the wooden floor. I did not dare turn my head. When I reached the main door, I pulled hard on the handle. The door would not open. I turned the key. The lock was stuck. The footsteps stopped behind me. A woman's hoarse voice whispered, "Once you have looked, you must sleep here." I screamed and pounded on the door. Outside, the rain poured heavily, and no one heard. The lights in the house suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed everything. In the dark, I heard many people whispering at once. Men, women, children, all of them came from the second floor. "Look. Sleep. Switch places. It is so cold in here." A dim light appeared at the top of the stairs. I looked up and saw the door to the room at the end of the hallway open. The mirror inside emitted a murky yellow light. In that light, countless figures stood crowded behind the glass. They pressed their hands against the mirror, pressed their faces against it, their mouths moving without sound. Their eyes were hollow, their skin deathly white, their bodies distorted as if they had been trapped in water for too long. And among them was me. It stood close to the glass, wearing exactly my clothes, holding my phone, with a calm smile on its lips. It raised a hand and gently tapped the surface of the mirror. Knock, knock, knock. Then I heard its voice echo inside my head. "You only need to sleep. When you wake up, everything will be finished." I do not remember when I fainted. When I woke, I was lying on the bed in the room at the end of the hallway. The bedside lamp was on. The mirror opposite me was completely clean. I could not move. My arms and legs felt heavy as if stones had been tied to them. My eyelids wanted to close because of a crushing sleepiness pressing down on me. I forced myself to bite my tongue to stay awake. The taste of blood filled my mouth. I looked at the mirror and saw myself lying on the bed. But this time, the reflection did not lie still. It slowly sat up, while I remained motionless. It placed its feet on the floor inside the mirror, stood, adjusted its collar, then stepped closer to the glass. It pressed its hand against the mirror from the other side. The glass sank inward like water. Its fingers came through first. Long, white, cold, then the wrist, then the elbow. I watched its flesh and body slide through the mirror bit by bit, like a child being born from the surface of the glass. I wanted to scream, but no sound came from my throat. The wet-haired woman stood behind it in the mirror. She smiled. Around her were other faces, those who had once slept in this room. They looked at me with hungry, jealous eyes, craving the warmth of the living. It had already pushed half its body out. The air in the room became so cold that my breath turned into mist. From under the bed came the sound of fingernails scratching wood. On the ceiling, there was the sound of someone crawling. Inside the walls, children were crying. The room was no longer a room. It was like a stomach contracting, preparing to swallow me. I gathered all my strength and rolled off the bed. My body hit the floor painfully. The paralysis vanished for an instant. I crawled to the wooden chair near the door, lifted it, and rushed toward the mirror. It looked at me, its smile disappearing. For the first time, I saw it afraid. I smashed the chair into the mirror. A cracking sound rang out like breaking bone. The glass split. Screams burst from every corner of the room. Not one scream, but dozens, hundreds of screams layered over one another. Hands inside the mirror beat madly against the glass. The wet-haired woman opened her mouth and howled. From her mouth poured black water and hair. It tried to crawl out faster, but the crack spread across its face, splitting the face that resembled mine into two uneven halves. I struck again. The mirror shattered, but instead of falling down, the shards flew backward into the darkness, as if sucked by a black space behind them. The room trembled, the wall cracked, the light went out. From the black hole where the mirror had stood, a cold wind blew out, carrying the smell of corpses soaked in water. I saw that inside it was not a wall, but an endless hallway lined on both sides with mirrors. In each mirror was a room, a bed, a sleeping person, and something standing beside them waiting to switch places. From within the darkness, the wet-haired woman crawled out. No longer through the glass. She crawled on all fours. Her joints bent backward, her head twisted to one side. Her hair swept across the floor, leaving a trail of black water. Behind her, pale faces crowded inside the dark hole, trying to crawl out. I ran. This time the room door opened. I charged down the stairs. Behind me the rattling crawl. The sound of bones striking wood. The sound of many hands scraping the wall. The main door was still locked. But I did not stop. I grabbed a chair and smashed it straight into the side glass door. The glass broke. I rushed through it, shards cutting my hands, my face, blood soaking my collar. I fell onto the porch and rolled into the yard under the rain. Behind me, the house was pitch black. At the second floor window, I saw me standing and looking down. Its face was cracked vertically like a broken mirror. One eye was bleeding black. It placed a hand against the window glass, its mouth moving. I could not hear it, but I could read its lips. It is not over. I ran from that house in the rain, barefoot over stones and mud, not daring to look back. I fainted in front of the drink stall at the head of the alley. The next morning, the old woman and several locals took me to the clinic. They said when they found me, I kept repeating one sentence. Do not let it sleep. Do not let it sleep in the mirror. After that, I reported it to the authorities. People came to inspect the house. They said there was no mirror in the room at the end of the hallway. There was only an empty wall, damp and cracked in every direction. On the floor were broken pieces of wood, my blood, and a lot of long hair caught between the floorboards. They found no trace of the woman and no evidence that a large mirror had ever stood there. But the old woman who sold drinks told me something else. She said many years earlier, after the wife died, the family once tried to take the mirror away and destroy it. They carried it into the yard, covered it with red cloth, and invited a ritual master to perform a ceremony. But when the cloth was pulled away, the mirror did not reflect the yard. It reflected the room at the end of the hallway. On the bed was the dead wife, lying on her side, facing away. When the ritual master raised the hammer, the wife in the mirror suddenly sat up, turned her head almost all the way around as if her neck had broken, and smiled. That night, the ritual master hanged himself. Since then, no one dared touch the mirror again. Then why do they say there is no mirror now? I asked. The old woman looked at me with eyes both pitying and afraid. Because after each time someone escapes, the mirror disappears for a while. It goes looking for another room, another house, another person. I moved away from that town within the week. For many months afterward, I did not dare look into mirrors. I covered every reflective surface in my room. I did not use the front camera. I shaved by feeling. Everyone said I was traumatized. That what I saw was only hallucination caused by sleep deprivation and stress. I also tried to believe that. Until one night, I was sleeping in my new apartment when I heard knocking. Knock. 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 I opened my eyes. The sound came from the wardrobe. I turned on the light and slowly walked over. Inside the wardrobe was nothing except clothes and a small mirror attached to the inside of the door. The kind of mirror I had never noticed. That mirror should only have been half the height of a person. But in the moment I looked into it, the reflection was not my room. It was the room at the end of the hallway in the old house. The white bed, the damp wall, and the large mirror. Inside the small mirror, the large mirror stood intact, without a single crack. Before it stood, me. Its face whole, its smile calm. Behind it, the wet-haired woman placed her hand on its shoulder like a mother placing her hand on the shoulder of an obedient child. It looked at me through the small glass, then said in my voice, "I have finished learning your face." The lights went out. I smashed the small mirror immediately. But from that day on, I knew everything had never ended. Some things do not need a large mirror to find you. A shard of glass, a dark window, a turned-off phone screen, a puddle after the rain, as long as it is enough to reflect your face. It can stand on the other side and look in. I write this story not so that anyone will believe me. I write because perhaps one day, you will rent a room at a suspiciously cheap price. Perhaps the landlord will avoid your eyes. Perhaps they will warn you not to sleep in the room at the end of the hallway. Perhaps you will laugh, just as I once laughed. Then you will step into the widest, cleanest, coldest room and see a large mirror placed opposite the bed. If that happens, please leave immediately. Do not be curious. Do not stand and look too long. Do not cover it with cloth and think that is enough. And above all, never sleep in a room with a large mirror. Because when you sleep, the image in the mirror does not sleep. It will sit up first. It will learn how to breathe like you, blink like you, smile like you. It will wait until you are weakest, most exhausted, most alone. Then it will step out. And you will wake up on the other side of the glass, in an icy room, on an old bed, surrounded by those who were once like you. And out there, in the real world, someone wearing your face will open their eyes, smile, and continue living in your place as if nothing ever happened.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.